Hi guys, my name is Vardhan and I'll be your instructor for today. On behalf of Edureka, I welcome you all to this webinar on Linux training. And in this session, we will talk about the Linux administration concepts. Okay, so if you people are going to be Linux administrators in the future, then what are the topics that you guys got to know, right? So I'll first talk about the different job roles and the different job description that a Linux administrator would have to perform. And I'll talk about some of the most common of those, and I'll go into detail and show you some of the demonstrations of those topics. All right, guys. So before I get started, let me just take a confirmation from you people. Can you all see my screen and hear my voice? If it's all clear, then we can go ahead, okay? Otherwise, I might have to restart again. Do acknowledge it, guys. You can say yes or no in the chat box. All right. And if you have any questions during the session, just feel free to put that question in the chat box and I'll answer them right away. All right, guys. Okay. So it seems like I'm getting a couple of acknowledgements. I've got an acknowledgement from around 4 or 5 people. They all can hear my voice and see my screen. So without wasting much time, let me just get started. Okay. So the first topic that I'm going to talk about is why choose Linux. Okay. Now I haven't shown you the agenda right now because before we talk about the agenda, right, I want to talk about two important topics. And the first of those topics is why should you choose Linux, and the second of that is the different job descriptions and the different job roles. Okay, now when I'm done with these two topics, then we can get started with the different tasks that an administrator would actually do. All right, so okay, let me just start with the first slide. Then it's as you can see, it's why choose Linux. Now I'm going through this topic because if you people are going to be administrators, all right, if you're getting trained, then these are things that you're supposed to know. These are like the general knowledge and the common sense. Okay, so Linux is first of all, it's freely available and it's open source. All right. When we say it's open source, that means anybody can download Linux and you can modify the source code and program Linux to work the way you want it to. Okay, you can upgrade any software, you can add softwares, you can change them, you can do whatever you want to. Okay, and you're not going to have any problems. But whereas with operating systems like Windows or with Macintosh, you might not be able to do it. Or in fact, any other thing that's not open source, right? Even when it comes to softwares or smaller programs, you cannot edit things which are not open source, because you have certain restrictions and you have to comply to the SLA, right? Service level agreement. So that's the thing. But with Linux, you don't have that problem. And basically, Linux became popular because of that reason, because it allowed developers to access the source code, modify the source code, make the changes, improve the software, and upload the changes and share it with the rest of the world. So that's how Linux has evolved. That's how Linux is so good, because there are multiple people collaborating together, working and improving Linux, right? They do it and then they share it with the rest of the world. And that's how Linux has grown so much. So that's the main power behind, or let's say the main reason why Linux is so popular nowadays and so good. Okay, now this is the reason why you people should choose Linux. If you're still going to have doubts at the end of the session, then this is something you guys need to note. All right, and the other 2 points are that of very secured and virus free. Now these two things are a little related here. When we say it's virus free, then I'm referring to the fact that you don't need to install any antivirus in your system, right? It's completely virus proof. There is no requirement. But whereas in case of Windows or Macintosh, you need antivirus, all right, because they can get your systems can get affected. And anything can happen, right? Your documents or files or folders, they can all be exposed, and people can get access to it, remotely. Now that's a problem. There can be a lot of breaches, and all these things can happen. But with Linux, that's not going to happen, right? You don't need an antivirus at all. And when it comes to even smaller bugs and viruses, Linux can stand up to them, and they're not going to get affected. All right. So that's the virus-free aspect, and it's very secure because of this reason. So when you don't have to worry about cybersecurity or any viruses, then you're of course going to be very secure, right? You don't have to worry about setting up the various security checks and all these things. You can just straight away get down to setting up your Linux VM and start working with whatever you want, all these things. So that's the aspect here. And then the next thing is Linux is very easy to learn and use. Now, when I say this, a lot of people, you might be surprised that, you might be thinking that it's very difficult and you should get used to the command line interface and the way the terminal works and all these things. But yeah, I actually have a question already. There's Rahul is already saying that yeah, it's not actually easy. It seems complicated. But see, Rahul, be rest assured that it's just because you're new to it. All right. The first time when you tried using Windows, you might have had the same problem. Okay, you might not have known where the start button is, what that does, how we can access the different files and directories, right? So maybe that would have happened when you're really young, but over time you've grown, right? You've gotten used to it. So the same thing's going to happen here. Linux is actually very, very easy. and you just need to spend time there figuring things out by learning how the different commands work in the CLI. And well, even if you don't need to use the CLI everywhere also, okay? Even if you're not comfortable there, you can still use Linux because you have a fantastic GUI that I would say is as good as Windows, right? But the advantage that Linux has over Windows is that it also has a CLI. So you have a command prompt in Windows, but here you have a CLI. And the CLI in Linux is much more advanced. It's much more easier to use when compared to Windows, because most of the people are not very familiar with the Windows command prompt. Well, that's because Windows has a very good GUI, and people prefer the GUI aspect in Windows. But with Linux, it's going to be very simpler. So you're not going to have any problem, and you can just get started right away very simply. So that's the thing with Linux. Yeah, absolutely, Rahul. So yeah, you just need to learn the commands, and it's not going to be too much of a task. I mean, I would say maximum it's going to take you like 1 week of practice. That's tops, right? When you do that, you'll be completely aware of Linux. What are the different commands, how to perform different actions and operations, all these things. And the advantage here is that, with the CLI, you can perform multiple operations at the same time. By just specifying one command, you can do a number of things. But to perform the same operation in Windows, you might, by using the GUI, right, you have to go through a lot of steps. Let's take the example of creating a user account. Okay, you're the administrator, be it Windows or Linux. If you're going to have to do it through Windows, then you'll have to go through the system, control panel, system tools, and user administration, and all these things. Okay, by the GUI. Well, even in Linux, if you're going through the GUI aspect, you will have the same procedure, right? You have like 4 or 5 steps, or maybe even 10 steps at the same time. It'll ask for authentication and all these things. But if you're going to use the Linux CLI, right, the terminal is going to be very simple. It's just going to be one command where you would say user add, and then you specify the name of the user, and that's it. You're done. And if you want to set the password, then the command is going to be simple again. It's going to be passwd. Okay. After that, you're going to give the username, and when you give the username, then it'll prompt you for the for setting up the new password, right? So it's like that. It's so simple. By just 2 commands, and you're going to type like 5, 6 buttons on your keyboard. That's how simple it is. So that's the terminal part. All right. And then we have the concept of multiple distributions. Okay. Now, when we say multiple distributions, then it means the different flavors that Linux comes in. Okay. Now, especially beginners, right? Many of them are confused, and they are they've wrongly taken that Linux is actually an operating system. Okay. Linux is technically not an operating system. Okay. Linux is just a kernel, and that can power any operating system and get you on something that's really running, that's really fast. And Linux together with something else gives you the operating system. And the first time when Linux was formed, it was again just a kernel, and that powered another operating system called the GNU. Okay, so now it's something similar. So you have multiple other operating systems which get powered by the Linux kernel, and then you have an operating system. And those operating systems, there are many in number, right? Now, that is what we call as distributions. So we have Ubuntu, we have CentOS, we have Fedora, we have Red Hat Enterprise's official enterprise edition, and then of course the free version of that is CentOS, right? And then we have SUSE. So we have a number of distributions here. We have almost hundreds of distributions, right? You have something called as Linux Mint. The Linux Mint is something that's very similar to Windows, right? You can play songs and you can see videos on that. So you also have that kind of a flexibility there. If you're not comfortable with one particular distribution, then you can switch to a different distribution, and you're not going to have any transition phase there, because they're all very similar, right? It's just the way things look, and it's just that you're going to become more comfortable with that without any extra effort put in, right? So that's the distribution aspect. And then, of course, you all know that Linux is fast and effective, right? So it's effective because it's highly reliable, its performance is dependable, and it's very stable. Okay, it's highly stable, and that is one of the reasons why all the servers and all the mainframes, they're all Linux based, right? You don't have any servers running on any other operating system. That's because Linux is really stable. And there's also another fact that you don't need to reboot a Linux system for almost up to a year, right? So just restarting the system once in a year is enough. So that's the advantage with Linux. So that's how good it is, and that's why it's effective, and of course it's fast. You guys should know why it's fast, right? It's pretty much faster than Windows. So that's the thing. Those are reasons why you should choose Linux. But there again, you can't compare the speed of Windows and Linux and Mac, because they're all almost same. They're just minor differences. But the whole point is that Linux is fast, and it's as good as any other operating system. It's as good as Windows or Mac. So that's what you got to know. And yeah, so these are some of the reasons why anybody should learn Linux. Okay, and if you want to become an administrator, then very good, you've made a good decision, and hopefully you can do well. All right, so now that you know this much about Linux, let me go to the next slide and let me talk about the different job roles here. Okay, now the most common job roles available in the industry are those of Linux administrator and support engineer, system engineer, and network engineer. Okay, so we have the Linux admin, right? So the Linux administrator or senior Linux administrators, these are the most common ones. Okay, and then you have the other roles like support engineer, system engineer, and network engineer. Now these three, in fact, all these four roles, they are very similar, you know, bar a little bit of differences. Okay, so if you look at the union of all these people, and if you look at the description, then you get what's written here. All right, so all of these people would basically be performing these things, and a lot of their tasks get overlapped, right? So a lot of tasks that a support engineer and system engineer would do would be overlapped. So it's very similar in that way, but for some reasons we have different descriptions, and of course there are going to be differences in what they do, but it's again going to be very minor. And if you want to do well, and if you actually want to be a good Linux administrator, you can actually learn all these things, and you can be probably eligible for all of these roles, right? So the description wise is that of installation and upgradation. And when we say installation and upgradation, it is that of the system, that is the software and the hardware. Okay, so at times when you know when your system has run its course, okay, when it's memory wise it's full, and even the software version wise, if it's getting outdated, then you got to be in a position to upgrade the software, right? You should be able to allocate the appropriate hardware resource and do the right things, measure what is the kind of performance your system needs, what kind of how much upgrade needs to be done, what is the RAM that you need to purchase, all these things, and then install the appropriate software on that hardware. Basically installation and upgradation, and setting up and configuring the whole network, right? That's going to be one important job of any Linux administrator. Okay, and that's something that happens very frequently, right? And then you have something called as patching. So patching is something related to the software, again the software, the security aspect, and the bug fixes. So when we say patching, it's basically improving the existing software that you already have. So we have something called as Linux repositories, right? So for the Red Hat based systems, you can do downloads. You can run a command called yum install, and then the software name that you want to install. Okay, and similarly for the Debian based, you have things like apt-get, install, and then package name. So you have all those things. But if you've not installed any software from that way, and if you've done something through the CLI by actually downloading the package and installing, then patching is something that you would have to do. And especially if you're going for something that's very that is not open source. Okay, if you're installing that kind of software, then that time patching is something that's what you got to do, right? So when we say patching, it means that you already have an existing version of the software, and then over time that software has been improved and that's been released. So you have to basically update the changes, right? And patching is a little complicated in that way, because we have to first track the differences. You have to generate a difference file, and then based on that file you have to generate the patch file that will just have the upgrades, the extra additional components, and that will have to be then finally integrated with your actual working software. Okay, and I have a question from Rajesh, and he's asking me, why would we need to do patching? Rajesh, it's pretty simple, right? We need patching because every software is going to be improved. So there's no software in the world that has been developed in the best possible way at the first go, right? You have a software, you will develop it, and you will definitely find bugs, and you definitely have ways to improve it, right? And that's how softwares make the companies making the software make money. They constantly improve the software, get a better version of that, and they release it. So that's what you also have to make use of, and especially with the security aspect. Even though Linux has a very good security, it doesn't mean that you're completely safe, right? You again have security fixes. You have a lot of you will have security problems, but those are not something that you got to worry too much about, because the security features are something that's going to take care of the any theft or any malware or any cyber security, right? It's going to enable that. So that's why you need to do patching. You got to improve the security of your system. You got to basically upgrade your existing software, and yeah, those are things, and that's why you need to do patching. All right, Rajesh? Okay. So then yeah, we have application support, right? So it's not like every software is going to right away be supported on your system. So there are certain things that you got to do, certain ports which need to be enabled, certain kind of tweaks that need to be done in your network, and all these things. So you have to be able to make sure that your application is running all the time. You got to make sure that you troubleshoot the working of any application. So that's one important job description that an administrator would have to do. And then we have storage migrations. So storage migrations is again a very common thing, because every now and then, or let's say not now and then, it's probably once in a while, you'll have to make your upgrades, right? So you'll have to keep a backup of your data. And the benefit of, with Linux is that the storage backup, right? It's very good, and it's very effective. So every time there's an upgrade, or every time there's something that's going to happen, you can do the backup, and you can have track of everything. And yeah, that's one important job role that the administrator would have to do, right? And then of course, improve stability and performance. He has to always monitor the performance and make sure the system performs better than what it was doing previously. So these are all a little more technical and a little more scenario oriented. Okay, yeah, so it's a little more scenario oriented. So improving the system and the performance based on so many other aspects, which you will probably gain with experience. So I cannot tell you right now what exactly all those things are, but yeah, those are things you will get the hang of it as and when you have as you gain experience. So that is there. And then user administration. So user administration is very important. It's very common thing, okay, where you'll have new people coming into your office. You'll have to set up the access for those people. You have to give them access to the different files and folders or directories that they would want to. And it's very important that you give them only what they are supposed to get, right? So you can't give them access to just anything and everything. So that's one thing with the administration aspect. And this is a very common task, and this is probably the most regularly worked upon description of any Linux administrator or system administrator in your company, in any company in fact. So that is that. And then yes, installing and configuring servers and services. This is I would say this is among the most important tasks, along with patching, right? Because we all know that all these servers and mainframes, they all run on Linux, right? A Linux operating system or a distribution of Linux is what powers these servers. Now these things are basically the backbone of your business, okay, and these business need to be taken care of, right? So whether you're storing data on your server, or whether it's you making an upgrade to your server, all these things need to be done on a regular basis. Some kind of file transfer happens, you need to be able to access the machine. And it's okay, it not necessarily be just servers, it can also be any remote machine, right? You should be able to configure them, set them up and access them and all these things. So this comes under the networking aspect, and it's really important that you do this, right? You will understand why it's so important as and when the session goes on, but for now what you need to know is the networking aspect is really important. Okay, so then we have backup and restore. Yes, so when something crashes, which is very rarely, right? It's not something that's going to happen very often. It'll happen very rarely, but when it happens, what do you do? What measures you take? How will you back up and restore? So that's one thing. And like I said earlier, monitoring. Server monitoring is really important. In fact, even network monitoring is really important to avoid any threats and hackers. And server, of course, needs to be constantly monitored and checked for performance. Otherwise, you're going to have a big dip in business. So that's there. And then troubleshooting is probably, it's the combination of just everything. You should be able to just make sure everything works, right? You can't have any error. You can't have an application that cannot be installed. You cannot have an application that is suddenly working off balance. So all these things need to be taken care of, and these are probably the most common job descriptions of any Linux administrator, right? And in fact, support engineer, system engineer, network engineer, and Linux admin, right? All these four are just synonyms. They are almost the same. Almost 80% to 85% of their job tasks is they're all the same, and it's going to be a small change, right? And even that is going to be related to only one particular concept. Now let's say if it's going to be a network engineer, then it's going to be heavily involved with the networking aspect, right? So system engineer is someone that's going to be involved with the entire troubleshooting, upgradation, patching, and all these things, right? Support engineer is someone that is a little more conservative role. He'll be taking care of the tickets, whatever problems other people face, the user administration aspect, and all these things. So yeah, those are the different job roles and the different job descriptions of these people, right? So these are the two slides that I wanted to give you an introduction to before I actually start training you on these concepts, right? So I've done this. Now next up, I have the agenda slide, and here in the agenda slide, I'll talk about some of these topics that I will cover today, right? From here, I have a couple of important topics that I've chosen, and those are probably the baby steps that you need to learn to get yourself advanced in Linux administration. So those topics are those of file permissions, right? Access control lists, shell scripting, patching, and networking, right? Networking again is really, really important. You have three different protocols. The SSH, that stands for Secure Shell, SFTP, that is the Secure File Transfer Protocol, and then we have SCP, right? Secure Copy Protocol. We have these three protocols. So I'll give you a demonstration on all these things. And then of course we have the file permissions is what I'll start off with. So I'm not sure if any of you attended my previous session, but in my previous session that was Linux tutorial, I spoke about how file permissions are set, in fact, for directories and for files. I showed you all those things. And even in this session, I will cover that because we have to talk about ACLs, right? Access control lists. And access control list is something of an extension to file permissions. So if you guys need to learn what is ACL, then you need to learn file permissions. So that's why I'm going to cover this. And then the next topic that we have is shell scripting. So, like I told you so many times, countless number of times I've told you that, executing commands is the most important thing as a person that's working on Linux, right? But how many times will you execute the command? You will have repetitive tasks. Supposing you're an administrator doing the same thing again and again, right? You'll get bored and you'll become inefficient and all these things. So that's where scripting comes in. You have one file in which you can feed in all the commands that you want to execute, right? One after the other. You just specify all those commands in that file. You just save it, and then you can just instead of executing all the commands separately, you just need to execute that one particular file. And when you execute one file, then all the tasks that you wanted, right, which will be present in the file, they will all be executed one after the other. So that's something that's going to make your job very simple. And if you're going to be an administrator, then you'll have a lot of such things which you will have to be doing on a day-to-day basis, right? Multiple times you have to do the same things, right? And shell scripting is something that's going to help you there, right? It's going to eliminate any repetitive tasks or tedious tasks. So that's the thing. And patching is something I discussed earlier, and I told you how important that is. Patching is related to enabling or improving the system security and upgrading the software and all these things. So that's it. Networking again I spoke about. So without wasting any more time, I just want to quickly get started. And the first topic that we have is managing file permissions. So file permission is something that's really important, because if you're an administrator and you want to give access to something specific, some particular file or directory, then this is how you do it, right? You assign it to particular users. And how you do it is you will first get to know what are the different permissions that users have, right? And you can do that by running this command called ls-l. I'm pretty sure you remember what this command is. And it basically, first of all, ls lists down all the contents in that directory, be it folders or be it files. Okay, it's going to list down everything. And when you give it along with -l, right, this is not one. All right, this is L. This is what it stands for. It's small l. So when we give ls-l, then what happens is you get the list of those contents along with something like this. Okay, you get all these details. So this is called long format, and that's what even the L stands for. So the long format, you get other details like what kind of a file is it, and what are the different permissions, right? So this basically is a 10-character block, right? The first block is 1 character, the second is 3, the third is again 3, and the fourth is also 3, right? So the first block here represents the file type. It can be either D, or it can be L, it can be an hyphen like this, or it can be C, or it can be B. And T here is something that represents a directory. Okay, and if it's a hyphen, then it means that the particular file that has been listed, that is that's a normal file. Okay, if it is C, then it means it's a character special file. If it's B, it's a binary special file. And if it's L, right, if you have an L here, it means it's a symbolic link file, right? So you'll have the file name here, and along with that, you'll have all these details of that particular file. So you have the after you'll be specified what is the type of the file, and after that you'll be specified what are the user permissions. Okay, so this is with respect to the person that's logged on to that system. Okay, so when we say user, it's basically the owner, and what kind of permissions does he have. So by default, the owner will have read, write, and execute, because if I create a document or any file in my system, then I should have complete access, right? So by default, I'll have the read, write access. And then the group that I belong to, supposing I'm a user that's added to my system, right? And then there'll be a network of users like me. Like in my team, I might have 5 other people. So we together we'll have a group. So it's not just me that'll get access to my documents, even my group, right? My extended co-workers, they will also get access to my files and my directories. But the level of access that they get is again something that's that can be controlled by using the file permissions. Okay. And then similarly, there are other random people who are not part of your project. Those are the others category, right? Other permissions. So what kind of access will they get? And when we go into details, I can tell you that we have RWX for each of these three different blocks. Okay, so user permissions, there's a read, write, and execute. Okay, X stands for execute, W is write, and R is read. So this means that I can read and I can write and execute any file that's been created in my system because I'm the owner and I can do all these things. Okay, but if somebody else from my group, right, is accessing that particular document, then what kind of permissions do they have? If there's a RWX here, which stands for read, write, and execute, then even they have complete permission, right? It's an open security for them also. But the other people here, okay, so the people who are not part of my group, and yeah, of course, if it's not me and nobody from my group, then what kind of access do they have? What it shows here is read, hyphen, and X. This means that the others have only read and execute permission. They don't have write permission, okay? And supposing if you don't want to give if you want to remove access from someone, or if you don't want to set particular access to anyone, then you can just put a hyphen instead of putting the character. Okay, if you put a hyphen here, then it means the write permission will not be there. Okay, but if you put a hyphen in the last character, the third character, then it means that the execute will not be there for that particular person. Or if you put a hyphen here, then it means that person can't read it, right? So that's what the hyphen means. The hyphen means that person doesn't have that particular feature. So in this case, it's the write feature. If the hyphen was here, it means that he didn't have the execute feature. So those are the different users, right? So we have the owner and the user denoted by U. The groups will be denoted by G, others by O. Okay, and if you want a combination of all these people, then it's A, all, right? So that's what this part of the command stands for. And then we have symbolic links. So symbolic link is something that's a shortcut or a link to another file or a directory. Supposing I've created a file, right? And if I want to create another copy of it, then that will basically be a symbolic link, right? So I can access it from two different locations, from a different directory or a different path, but they will be referencing the same route, right? So that is what symbolic link means. You're just having different shortcuts and different access to the same particular file. So that's it. And then you'll be displayed the owner name of that particular file or directory, and then you'll have the group name, right, that person belongs to, or the group name the file belongs to. And then you have the file size. So whatever the size of your file is, it's actually in kilobytes. So that will be displayed here, and then followed by the time at which the file was created, right? So you have that detail over here. So this has actually gotten a little more theoretical. So what I'll do is, as per some of the requests from the audience, let me just quickly go to my terminal and show you how exactly this looks like, right? So one thing is that I will be working on the CentOS distribution, all right? So I'll be using the CentOS distribution of Linux, and I'll be running it on a VM, right? So this is my virtual box, and I have a couple of VMs here. I have a Ubuntu VM, I have a CentOS VM. In fact, I have 3 other CentOS VMs, all right? And currently I'm using a 32-bit CentOS virtual machine. But if you have an operating system, well and good, you can just use that either. But yeah, for my purpose, I'm having Windows, and I've launched VirtualBox on top of that. And in the VirtualBox, I'm using my CentOS. So in my previous class, I gave you an introduction to the entire GUI, right? So this time I don't want to spend time teaching you that, but rather let me get to things that's really important. So let me just open my terminal and show you this, right? I'm just going to make it a little big. All right, this is good enough. So this is my terminal, this is my command line, all right? Now, if I want to check which is the particular directory I'm currently in, then I can just give a command pwd, right? Print working directory, that's what it means. And it says I'm currently in this directory, /home/Edureka, where this first slash here refers to the root directory. Then under root, I'm inside the home folder inside root. And then inside home, there's a folder called Edureka, so that's where I am. So that's what is the pwd right now. And I can list down the different files and directories in this path by just giving the command ls, like I told you earlier. So I give ls, then all the different files and directories and the folders will be available, right? They're visible. So documents, downloads, desktop, pictures, videos, these are the different folders. And then new cv.java, derby.log, these are the different files that we have, right? Now, if I want an extended format of this, like what I showed you in my slide, the long format, then I can just give the command ls-l. Okay, when I do this, I have the long format of that particular content, right? So we have what is the name of the file, when was it created, we have the timestamp here, the size over here, then the name of the group, the name of the owner, right, the symbolic link, and then the file permissions. I spoke about each of these things earlier. So if any of you guys are still not clear, please do let me know, right? So to give you an example, let's take the example of this desktop, right? So this one here, the first character here refers to the fact that it's a directory, it's not a file, okay? And these three characters here, they represent the user permissions, okay, or the owner permissions. This represents the group permissions, and these three characters represent the other permissions, the other users who are not the owner, and neither are they a part of the group. So what kind of permissions do they have? So those people here, they don't have the right access. They can only read that particular directory and execute, right? So the same thing can be said for even groups, and it's only the owner and the user, that particular user, who has complete access. So that's what it is. So this is how the ls minus l command looks like, and a beautiful version of this is what I showed you in my slides, right? So this is it, okay? And let me go on to the next slide, and here let's talk about setting file permissions. So right now the file permissions are what you saw on my screen, right, on my terminal. What are those permissions? But what if I want to change permissions? What will I do? How will I execute that? How will I do that? So that is done with the help of chmod command, okay? So change mod is basically going to change the access permissions, right, of files and directories. So that's what chmod is going to do. And if you want to change the owner of a particular file or directory, then you can use these chown, okay? Chown it's called. So it means change ownership, right? And then if you want to change the group ownership of that particular file or directory, then you can use ch group, right? It stands for change group. So these are three important ways that you can set permissions to files and directories, right? And how do you do it? What arguments will you give? That is what is this, right? In this table I have an example for that. Okay, so supposing you want to change the group ownership of a particular file, then you can just specify chmod. You can say g plus and then the permissions here. Okay, the plus is the operator here is basically something that's it's like a relation between whether it's a user or a group or others, right? Between that and the permissions. So this is like the operator, or the one that actually compares or concatenates the permissions and the person in question, right? And then followed by that we have the file name. So what this would do is, so when we say g plus wx, then what it means is the file the group belongs to, right? Now that group is going to additionally get the write access and the execute access, okay? So this particular file, the group this file belongs to, that group is going to get additional write access and execute access. So that's what this command means. Now let's go to the next command. Okay, now here it says chmod u is equal to rwx. Now when we say rwx, it means that the user or the owner of that particular file or directory, that person, you're setting his permissions as read, write, execute. You're giving him complete permissions, full permissions you're giving him, okay? That's what equal to does, okay? If it's plus, then it's going to additionally give these two permissions, but if it's equal to, then it's going to set the permissions. It's going to override whatever was there previously, and it's going to replace it with this. All right, and here we saw adding permissions, but if you want to remove permissions from someone, right, then you can just use the minus here, and then minus followed by permissions. So what this does is, the other people, right, neither the owner nor the people part of the group, so the other people, those people, you're removing the write access and the execute access from those people. So that's what O minus WX means. And then U equal to RWX is what I told you, right? So you have the file name. So that's how we do it. And similarly, if you want to change the ownership of a particular file, then you can just use chown, the username, and followed by that will come the file name. So when you hit enter after that, that particular file or directory will have a new user, right? It'll have a new owner. And if you want to also give them a new group, along with the username, you want to assign them to a secondary group, then you can do it by giving username colon group name followed by the file name, right? And if you want to change only the group name, then you can again use the syntax where you can say change group followed by group name and then the file name, the file which is in question. So that's what it is. So let me just quickly run a demonstration of that. So here we are back in my terminal. I'm just going to clear this screen. So, and let me run the ls command again. So right now we have the desktop folder, right? We have downloads, this is another folder. Now what I'll do is I'll try to change permissions for one of these folders. So let me say sudo, and I'm saying sudo because these permissions, they cannot be just changed by any user. So right now I've logged in as Edureka, okay? And being logged in as Edureka, I cannot assign myself extra privileges. So only the root user or the super user can do it, right? And if I want to execute a particular command as a super user, as a root user, then I have to use this sudo, right? When I do sudo, then it means I'm running that command as a super user, and it will of course ask me a password, the administration or the administrator password, and I hit that, and then the command will be accepted. Okay, so basically if I want to change the permissions of the desktop, now well, before I do sudo, let me just do an ls-l and see what are the permissions currently. So if you look at desktop, right now the access is read, write, execute, and then the group has read, does not have write access but has execute access, and the others they again have read and execute. Okay, now let me change the ownership of desktop, and let me give the write access also to the group of the file belongs to. So if I want to do that, then I can run the command chmod, and I want to give access to the group, right? So I'm going to say G, and I'll use the operator plus, and then I'm going to say W. Okay, and followed by this will be the file name or the directory name. So in my case, it's going to be desktop, right? So when I do this, then the permissions would have changed. Okay, so I would have changed the permissions for the group where I'm giving the group write access to this particular directory. So now if I again do an ls-l, then you will see that there's a W over here. Okay, so let me just hit enter, and as you can see, we have desktop over here, and this time even the group has read, write, and execute permissions. All right, only the others, only their permissions is not changed. So that's how simple it is. So similarly, you can also change the ownership. So right now desktop belongs to Edureka, right? What I can do is I can create another folder or directory. Let's say I want to create another folder called ABCD. Okay, so this is the new folder I'm creating, ABCD, and make directory that you see here. This is what is the command that is used to create a new directory. And when I hit enter, then the new directory is created. Now again, if I do ls-l, so in this list you will see the new folder called ABCD. Okay, now this is what is the username, this is the group name. All right, now if I want to change the username for this particular folder, then I can just use the command. Okay, before that, let me clear the screen. Okay, let me just run the command again. Yes, and now to change the ownership, I'm going to run the command chown. Now we can specify the owner name that I want to change it to. Let's say I want to change the ownership to root. Okay, root is the super user, so I'm going to say root, and then followed by that I can say the file name, right? So I can say ABCD is what I want to change. So when I hit enter, okay, it says ownership. I cannot change the ownership because I'm executing this command as Edureka. So for that purpose, let me execute the same command as root itself. Okay, sudo, and when I hit enter, it asks my password. Okay, so the password was wrong, but now it should work. Yes, so now it has changed, and let me just run the ls-l command again, and if you can see now, the ownership has changed. So similarly, the same way the user ownership and the group ownership can also be changed using the same command, right, which I discussed earlier. So that's about the file ownership, right? So now getting back to my slides, this is something that's very simple, file permissions. I even spoke about this earlier. So that's about file permissions, okay? So the next topic is something that's really important, and that is something that's related to file permissions, okay? That's called ACL, right? Access Control List. But before that, let me give you a scenario here, okay? I'll tell you how and during when do we want to use ACL compared to file permissions. So you have a person here that's saying, how will I give extra permission to only the manager and the team lead, right? So you have a team of say 10 people, and if you want to give extra permissions or access to one other folder and directory only to a manager or only to the boss, then how will I do it? I can of course do it using file permissions, but is that feasible? Right, so I have to do it every time, and if there are multiple teams, then I have to do it for every single manager, and I have to do it every single time for a different team lead, right? So now this is something that's very repetitive. This task is going to get repetitive, right? So I have to create a new owner, I have to create a new user, right? Give them that access by using the chown, right? But is there any alternative? Yes, of course there is, right? So now he knows that there's something called as ACL. So using ACL, he can give special privileges. So in this case, even though this particular team lead and manager will be part of the same group, okay? So even though they'll be part of the same group, only these two people will have extra permissions. So in this way, you will not have, you don't have to create a new group for, especially for these two people. Now, because the problem here is at a later point of time when the person ceases to exist from in that team, okay? Now let's say that I'm currently in the marketing team, okay? And at this point of time, I want access to this project, or I want access to this particular directory. okay, and I am getting access to it. But at a later point of time, when I'm leaving that team, I'm going to a different team. Let's say I'm going to operations team. Then at that point of time, the administrator should make sure that I don't have access to the marketing folder, right? So I've taken away that access and I'm given different access. So that is something the administrator would have to do. And to an extent, he could do that by using file permissions, where he'll create a different group and he'll assign me that group. But every time a different person comes in, can he do it? And can he give special privileges every time? No, he can't. Not using file permissions. But using ACLs, he can, okay? And ACL here, it basically extends the functionalities of files and directories. And ACL stands for Access Control List, okay? And as the definition says, ACLs allow you to give permissions for any user or group to any directory or file or disk resource. That basically means anything that is there on your system, right? Anything that's accessible from the root, that it can be given extra permissions can be given to those from by using access control lists, okay? And but before using it, right, before we start executing ACLs, there is one thing. We need to enable them, okay? We can enable ACL by defining it in the root etc fstab file, okay? So there's a file under this directory, and I'll open that file and show you, okay? So basically you have to enable ACL by adding the ACL details here. So this is the fstab. Initially, when you've not enabled ACL the first time when you're using it, or by default, it would end over here. So you'll have ext4. This basically defines the extension that your system is running on, and then you'll have defaults, okay? Followed by that, you'll have 1.1, right? So there'll be a big space here. Now, if you want to enable ACL, then you have to just give a comma ACL right here, okay? When you do that, then your ACL is basically enabled. And in this snippet, as you can see, I've just accessed the fstab from the cat command, okay? I've used the cat command to display whatever is there in the fstab, okay? So yeah, and then you have the next line that says in the option listed under root, we need to add ACL after defaults. Yeah, so the thing which is important is you can't just add it everywhere. And these lines look pretty similar, but what you got to notice, there is something referring to root, right? So this means that these changes will be applied to the root folder. So anything that comes under root, to all those files and folders, you can enable ACL. Okay, so it's important that you execute it on this line /dev/mapper. So this is something that's common across all distributions. Okay, so some details here would be different in different distributions, but the common thing is you'll have to where in the line which is referring to root. So in that line you have to say comma ACL after defaults. Okay, and then once you're done with setting the ACL, it's it's not game over. Okay, ACL is not just going to be there. What you got to do is you've got to mount that particular directory. Okay, supposing in our case it is the root directory which we are modifying, right, where we've enabled ACL. So in our case we'll be mounting our root directory again. So this basically means you're rebooting the file system. So instead of having to restart your computer altogether, you're just remounting your files and file permissions. Okay, and when you've done that, then the changes will be updated, and then when you run mount command, then you will have the list of options where you can see that ACL is enabled. So let me just do that by going to my terminal. Let me just show you a practical demonstration of that. Okay, so right now we are in the /home/Edureka. So the file that we are talking about, the fstab that is present under etc in root. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say vi root etc fstab. Okay, let's hit enter. Okay, so this is the file that I showed you in the PPT, but the thing is it's read-only right now. That's because I've logged in as Edureka, right? So let me just run a sudo in front of it. This means that I'm executing this command as a root user, and now I'll have the access to modify this document, right? So let me just hit insert, and as you can see here, this was the line that I was talking about, right? /dev, where we are talking about the root directory. So here we have something called ext4, which defines the extension that we are running, and then we have defaults. So this is what I have to change. So let me just quickly come down, and next to defaults, I'm just going to say comma ACL, right? And now let me just say colon and WQ. It stands for save and exit. So when I do this, basically my file is now updated. Okay, my ACL is enabled, but I have to mount this. So how will I mount it? By using the command that I showed you earlier. So that is sudo mount -o remount. all right, and followed by the directory that you're referring to. In our case, it's root, so I'm going to say this and hit enter. All right, so my mount is also successful. Now, if I run the mount command, then you can see that ACL is enabled over here, because otherwise, if I would have ran the mount command before updating it, then it would have just said RW and then the bracket would have closed here. Okay, but now the extension has been increased to it's read write and ACL now, right? So that's my permissions that I have now, and that's how the ACLs work. All right, guys, any doubts here? Okay, so I have a question here from Rajesh, and Rajesh is asking, I still don't get the actual need for ACL. Okay, Rajesh, let me help you out there. Okay, let me just use the highlighter and explain this thing. So, okay, so before anything, let me just clear this screen off. All right, and now let me highlight things here. So the thing is, we have certain files and directories, right? So let's call it file 1, or let me just display this. Okay, so let's say this is file 1, this is file 2, and this is file 3. Okay, and currently there are a lot of teams. Okay, let's say there are like 20 teams, right? We have small teams. We have the marketing team, the operations team, the production team, the deployment team, the development team. We have numerous teams, support team and stuff, but you want only some people to access this. Supposing I want only this team to access this file or this folder, okay, I can set file permissions for that. Okay, if I want only this team to access this file or folder, I can do that using file permissions. The same thing can be done over here also. Now comes the complicated part. Okay, so you can even ignore these two people. Let me just take the example of these three people. Okay, now these three teams, this complete team will get access to this. This complete team will get access to this. Okay, this complete team will get access to what is here. But what if you want the manager of this team or the team lead of this team to also access what is there over here in this folder? And similarly, what if you want the manager of this team or the head of this team or the team lead to get access to this particular folder or one folder inside this folder, right? Maybe just the summary result. So maybe they can get access to how good the rival team is performing. Okay, so that kind of a file might be present somewhere in this directory. Okay, so what if I want people from here or here to just access that one particular thing in spite of them being in a different team? So I don't want to assign these people this particular folder, right? It's a complicated thing. If I assign them this, then they'll get access to the entire team's projects, and that's not something that I want. Okay, that's highly that's ill-advised thing. So at that point of time, I can use ACL. So ACL is the solution at that time, where I can just probably choose the particular file that I want to use. I can reference that and I can assign it to them specifically. Now that I've told you how the ACL is assigned, now let me go and run a command and show you how the file permission is actually set, right? Okay, so Rajesh, are you clear? Can I erase the diagram here? Yeah, okay, so you're good. So I'm just going to erase this and okay, all right. So here we are. And let me first create a file and show you how the permissions are and how you're enabling or extending the permissions. So right now we are here, right? So I'm just going to navigate to my documents folder. All right. So there's nothing here either. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new file called file1.txt. Okay. When I do this, I'm inside here. Let me hit enter and just write random text. Hi, this is Vardhan. And let me say welcome to Linux training tutorial. All right, and let me just exit. So this is going to be the contents. So let me just verify stuff here. When I do this, yes, so this is what I typed and this is what is there. Okay, now if I run a ls-l command, right? So there's this one particular file that I'm talking about. It was created at this time, and this currently the owner here has the read, write, and execute access. The group has read, write, and execute, but the other people, they don't have anything other than read. They cannot write or execute. Okay, now let me use the ACLs to update the commands over here. Okay, to update the permissions. But before I do that, let me just talk about the command by going to the slides. Right. So far we've only enabled ACL. So we've only enabled the use of ACL. Okay, by doing the sudo remount and by showing you these options. So the actual assigning the permission is done by this two commands called set FACL and get FACL. Okay, so the syntax for setting is set FACL -m, and then you have the user, the particular user you're talking about, the that particular person's username and the permissions and the file name. Okay, the file in question. Similarly, if you want to view the existing permissions, then you say get FACL and the file name, right? And when you execute these commands, it will look something like this. All right, so here you're setting the permissions, and when you view the updated permissions, then this is what it looks like. So it would say the default file, group, and owner. Okay, the users, it will usually say only user, group, and mask and others. Okay, but if you've assigned it to someone specific, then you would have another line, referring to only that particular user. So in this command, we set user 1 and giving him read-write access, and that's what we've done here. So this particular user 1 is getting read, write, and execute permissions. All right. So okay, I have another question from Gokul. Gokul is asking, what does -m stand for? Gokul, -m here, it's an M flag, and the M flag is basically used to refer to the fact that we are assigning permissions to files and directories, right? So this is something that has to be given. So you don't control this thing. This is part of the command, and this is not an option. This is something you have to give, right? Okay. So let me just go back to my terminal quickly. Now I can use the command get. Okay, but before I show you the get FACL and the get, or before I use the set FACL, before that, let me create more users in my system. Okay. What do you think I want to do that? Because right now there are just two users. One is the root, which is by default, which is the mother user, the super user, and then there is Edureka. So let me first create another user by running the command sudo user add, and let's say I want to create a user for myself, Vardhan. Okay, I do this, I hit enter. Password is this. Okay, so it says user Vardhan already exists. So let me just verify things by going to administration, user and groups. Okay, this is the password. Okay, so we have different users here. Okay, so we have Edureka, this is the user I'm using right now, Vardhan and ABC. Okay, so this is a different user. So what I'll do is, since Vardhan is already present, I will assign that particular file to myself. Okay, right? So let me just minimize this for now. I'm going to run a ls-l command, and basically Vardhan is not part of the group. Okay, that's because Edureka, the primary group is Edureka. Okay, so even here the group that the file belongs to, 1 minute, yeah, the file the file one belongs to Edureka. Okay, group Edureka and the username Edureka. So right now, since Vardhan is not part of that thing, I wouldn't have access to this file if I was executing as Vardhan. Okay, since I'm executing as Edureka, I have access to it. So yep, this is my group. So what I'm going to do is, I'll first show you that I can edit this file. Okay, so I'm going to say vi file1.txt, and I'm going to say insert. So here I'm saying I can execute it as user Edureka. All right, so I'm saving it. Now let me say get FACL and the file name. Now as you can see, the user, that is myself, I can read, write, and execute. Okay, when I say myself, I'm referring to the fact that it's Edureka. Okay, the group I belong to can read, write the file, and the other people can only read. So the user Vardhan comes under the category of others. Okay, so let's say I want to execute one command as Vardhan. So for that, I'm just going to say su Vardhan. So I'm going to execute commands as Vardhan. Okay, you can see the username has changed to Vardhan. Now if I try accessing this file, I might be able to do it. So let me say cd, or let's list down. So we have file1.txt here. I'm going to view this file, vi file1.txt. Okay, so this is the file that we created, but it says it's read only. Okay, and I cannot enter anything here. So it says warning, changing a read only file. So right, so let me just exit this. As you can see, I can't do anything here. I'm helpless. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly exit, get back as Edureka, and let me clear the screen. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set FACL. Okay, and I'm going to do that as I have to execute that command as root. So I'm going to say sudo set FACL -m and the user that I'm referring to. Okay, the user is Vardhan. Okay, and the permission that I want him to gain. and that is that of read, write, and execute. Okay, and the file we are talking about is file1.txt. So when I hit enter, I've got the access by now. So now let me again switch user to Vardhan. Password is this, right? Now we have file1.txt, and let me view do vi, and see, now it doesn't say warning or that I can only read this file, but now I can even execute this file. So let me give enter, say writing this file as user Vardhan, right? So great, quit, and yeah, there we go. So that's what we can do with the help of set FACL. Okay, now let me just check get FACL by running this command. Now if you see, earlier there was only user, and he had the read write access. Okay, and then you had these details. You didn't have this. So since I enabled the FACL, right, since I enabled that by using this command, I've got an additional permission for myself, for Vardhan user. That's read write execute, and yeah, the others are pretty much the same. So that's about this topic. So let me just clear the screen, and yeah, I'm gonna exit as this user. I'm back as Edureka. Now let me go back to my slides and go to the next topic. All right. So I hope it's all clear to everyone. I'm pretty sure that is the case. So moving on, the next topic I'm going to talk about is that of shell scripting. So guys, shell scripting, I told you right earlier, shell scripting is really important, because this is something that's the fundamental work or task of a Linux administrator, right? So as a Linux administrator, I can specify commands in my terminal. So you saw my terminal, how it looked like. You saw how I type commands. Suppose I want to change one directory, then I do a cd once, or if I want to go to a particular path, I do cd and then I put the path, and then I get to access that file by doing vi and all these things, right? But what if I could run commands like that, like hundreds and thousands of those commands in just one go, and I don't have to do that every single day, right? How would I do it? I can just write a script, right? I can just write all those commands in one file and execute that particular file every single time. So what happens is, when you execute that particular file every single day, then those set of commands or operations will be performed every single day without you actually putting the same effort, right? So you're saving on your effort and your time by writing these kind of shell scripts. So let me just get started with that and give you an introduction to this, right? So as the definition it says, a shell script or a shell program is a file containing a group of commands that need to be executed. Okay. The advantage is, one file containing all the commands can be executed, and the thing to note is, shell scripts are interpreted and not compiled. Okay, I'll get back to this line. Okay, and the first line of every shell script is you have hashtag, exclamation mark, space, /bin/bash. Okay, now there's a reason why we have these two important lines. Okay, now first of all, does anybody here they have any doubts what the shell is, guys? Any doubt? Of course. Okay, so everyone seems like unanimously everyone here has said, yeah, we're not sure about shell. Okay, so yeah, Rajesh, Pooja, and Amneet, yes. Guys, see, so basically shell is the component that's going to interact with your kernel. Okay, so we have our command line here. Okay, you have your command line interface or your terminal, which where you will be specifying the commands, right? And how will this commands be executed? How does the command, the kernel or the operating system execute that command? That's because of the shell. So the shell will basically take the commands, and that will in turn give it or forward it to the OS or the kernel. Okay, it will in fact forward it to the kernel. The kernel will do the rest. So that's the role of shell. So that's why we say it's called shell scripting, where we write commands for the shell, and the shell will interpret those commands for us and get the job done via the kernel. Okay, I have another question here, and that is, what is bash from the image? Okay, yeah, that's a very good question, and that was something that I wanted to answer, right? So bash here refers to born again shell. Okay, so the shell scripting is something that is native to Unix, right? So back in the 70s, when Unix was formed or found, that was that was all about shell. But however, now things have progressed and grown, right? So now we have more than just one shell. We have bash, we have dash, and all these things. So bash refers to born again shell or born again shell, and born again shell is something that's used in Linux. Okay, so Linux is basically the child of Unix, and we have the bash here, and bash is like really better than just shell. Okay, so if you want to access the shell programs, it's just sh, but bash refers to the fact that you're executing this script as a born again shell. Okay, and yeah, this is basically the path where shell is present. So we have a number of shells. So like I told you, we have bash, we have dash, and all these things, and we can also find out what are the different commands there. So let me just go to my terminal and show you that. Okay, instead of just talking, let me actually do some hands-on here. To display the different shell types that your operating system supports, you can just run the command cat /etc/shells. Now that's because there is this file called shells. Okay, so shells is a file, and this has a list of all the different shells that your OS supports. So in my case, my CentOS supports the ones that are present over here. So I'm just running a cat command which will display the contents of this file. So when I hit enter, I have all these details. So my system basically supports shell, born again shell, no login, dash, tcsh, and csh. Okay, so all these things. And if you guys want to know where the shell is present, then you can just the directory where it's present, then you can just say which, okay, which, and then the file. If I say sh, then it means that it's present in this directory. Okay, so you also have the name of the directory that's present here, but the technical way to find out the directory where that's present is by saying which and bash. So my bash file is present in this directory. Okay, now what this essentially means is if I want to execute any file or any shell script as bash, then I have to include this in the first line of my file. Okay, so that is why there was a note that said that this should be the first line in the file, right, after hashtag and exclamation. So this is the reason, because we are referring to the directory that where the shell is part of. Okay, and similarly, if I say which and no login, then it will show the path where that is present. So yeah, so that is the thing. So let me just clear the screen. So guys, let me just quickly go to my slides again. Okay, and get continued here. So I told you that every file here will start like this, and then you'll have the file contents. So let's take the example of this hello world here. So the file contents is such that the first line is this, and the second line is an echo command, and which says hello world. And if you execute that file, okay, this is what the output is. This is what you're supposed to get, and that's what you get. And you execute the shell files as bash followed by the name. If it's a shell file, just sh, then you can just give sh space hello dot whatever the file name is, right? And okay, I have another question here, and he's asking why is the file name saved as .sh? Okay, now that's again a very good question. Okay, so Monish has asked me that question. Monish, so when we say .sh, right, it's basically just the extension of the file. Okay, so it can be anything. We don't necessarily need to give .sh, so you can just say hello. Okay, but the thing is, there are many Visual Studio editors, right? We have the Visual Studio editor, and we have many other editors for the Linux, right, where you can do the coding or you can do the typing. So basically, when you say sh, those editors recognize that this is a bash file, and they will do the graphics, and they will make the file contents look good. They'll make the code look good. Otherwise, if you don't give sh, then there's no problem. So technically, you're not going to have any problem. But the thing is, it's just that it's going to be a normal file, and it's not going to be easy for you to start coding there. So that's the only difference, right? So yeah, so let me first of all go to the shell, create the first file. Okay, the first file for us. So let me go to my terminal, and right now we have file1.txt. Now what I'm going to say is, let me create another file called bi bash file.sh. I'm going to save it as .sh because the editor understands that it's a bash file, and it makes sure that it looks good, right? So I just hit enter, and here we are. And the first line should be this, okay, and /bin/bash is where my bash directory is, so that's why I'm using that line. Now I'm just going to say echo hello world, right? So let me just save and exit, and if I run this file, okay, ba bash file.sh, then I get a hello world. So that's it. So that's as simple as it is for executing a bash file. Okay, but I mean, it's so simple, but I don't want to just end there. I don't want to disappoint you all, because there's something really good in store, right? So I'm going to give you a little more in-depth details of shell scripting. Okay, now that is what I have in this slide. So in Linux shell scripting, I'm going to tell you what are the other things that we can do, right? How will you use variables and comments? How will you write comments in your file? Okay. I will talk about how do you read inputs, and then how will you pass arguments to your file. From the command line, when you execute the bash file, you can pass arguments, right? So how will you do that? So the difference between reading inputs and passing arguments is that reading inputs would be, when you've already run your command, right? When you've executed your bash file, then it will prompt you for an input. Okay. Now, how will you give an input during runtime? So that's what this is, and that's passing arguments. And that's the difference between the two. And then finally, the programming aspect. How will you use the for loop, if then else, and if elif? Okay. So if elif basically is if else if. So that's what this stands for. Okay. So we're going to do all these things in this shell scripting tutorial. So let me go back to my terminal, clear the screen, right? Now, first and foremost, adding variables and comments. So let me first of all add comments and show you how that is. Okay, so I'm going to edit this file again. Let's say insert. In any of our Eclipse IDE or in any C programs, it would basically be 1/ and asterisk, right? Or just 2/ and then that's a comment. So here it's even simpler. Just give one hashtag, and if you write anything else here, then that basically becomes a comment. So it becomes a comment, and that line will not be executed. This is a comment, and this line will not be executed, right? So let me just save this, and when I execute this bash file, it again says hello world. That line was ignored completely. But let me show you the alternative. Okay, now in case I remove the asterisk from here, then this basically is considered as a command, right? So it should basically, there's no syntax here, it doesn't make sense, so it should throw an error. So let's see if that happens. And as you can see, hello world, the first command is displayed, but after that it says there's a error here. Line 4, this command not found, because it's not able to understand this. It's not a keyword or anything, so that's why. So that's about how we add commands. All right, so I'm going to say this. So yeah, that's how you add commands. And then next comes the concept of variables. I'm pretty sure you all know what variables are, okay? Because I'm guessing you all are from programming background. Is that the case, guys? Everyone? Can I get a yes from everyone? Otherwise, I've got a whole lot of things to do this session. Okay, that's good news. Seems like most of you are from there and you know what variables are. So what I'm going to do is, to the same file, I'm going to add a new variable and execute that variable. Okay, so let's create a new variable called name. Okay, and I'm going to say Vardhan. I'm going to just type in my name, and here I can write a command such that it I'll call the variable here. I'll say my name is, okay, and here by using the dollar symbol followed by the variable name, I can just call the variable. So whatever stored in here will be displayed here. Okay, so I'm just going to exit this by saving it, right? And when I execute this, okay, so again, yeah, there's a error here. That's because I've not used echo, right? So how silly of me. So we need to use echo, so that's the standard output, otherwise it's not going to happen. So yeah, it's a very silly mistake from my part. And yeah, echo my name is $name, right? So now we'll execute this. So as you can see, hello world, my name is Vardhan. It was basically a variable that got executed. So similarly, what I can also do is I can add any number of variables, right? So let me add another variable. Let me add like numbers. I can define x to be equal to 100. Okay, I can do this. Okay, no, there won't be full stop. So I can say y is equal to 5, right? And I can just save this. Or in fact, before saving it, what you got to do is, right, you got to call it, right? So let's say echo and $x. Then next line, let's say echo $y. But maybe for our reference, to do something better, let me add it here. Okay, echo $y. Okay, so first y should be displayed and then this should be displayed. So let me just save this and bash it again. So yeah, first y got executed. Y, the variable in y is 5, what the value stored, and the variable x has 100. So I first called this and then I called this. So that's how it is, guys. So simple, right? So that's about variables and comments. Okay, So yeah, we just cleared the screen, and next thing I want to show you here is how do you execute, or rather, it's about how do you pass arguments, right? So you have your shell, and how will you pass arguments to your shell? So for that, let me just go back to my bash file, right? Now, passing your arguments is basically you during executing the command. While you're saying bash and executing the file, that time you're specifying some arguments. So what I can do is I can just hit insert and I can write a command here. Okay, let's say echo the argument you entered is, and it's $1. Okay, now there's a reason why it's $1 because there's a numbering convention. Okay, so every time you add arguments, so they'll be numbered as 1, 2, 3 by default, right? So in this case, we are just naming the variables and we are calling these variables by using the dollar symbol. But if you use the dollar symbol followed by numbers, then the argument corresponding to that number will be executed. So now let me just hit enter here, and let me just save this. Okay, now what's going to happen is if I execute this bash file along with an argument, now let's say hi, and if I hit enter, then hi will be written in that instead of that particular argument. So right, instead of $1 we have hi here. So that's how it is. And if I want to send multiple arguments here, okay, then I can do that also. I can do that by simply giving $2, $3 and $4, because that'll be the convention that I'll be going in, right? So I can just followed by this I can just say $2, $3 and $4, and I can say the arguments you entered are, and then these. Okay, so now I'm just going to save and quit, and if I execute this along with a couple of arguments, so let's say hi, my name is, so I've basically entered 4 arguments here, and each argument with a space in between, right, blank space. So when I hit enter, I have the argument that I entered. So hi, my name is. So that's how you enter details in. So guys, awesome, right? That's really cool, right? So that's the arguments part. Okay, so yeah, but one thing which you guys need to know is they start from $1, $2, $3 and $4. Okay, but we have something called as $0 here, and $0 refers to the first argument, and in fact they are not the first arguments, and your first argument is your file name. So bash file.sh is my first argument, hi is my second argument, this is third, this is fourth, and this is fifth. So that's how it is, right? So let me show you another example of that. Let me insert and say the first argument is, and if I give dollar and 0, and when I save and quit, okay, I have forgotten to put insert there, right, like earlier. So echo, right? So now if I save and quit, and if I bash this, then as you can see these are available, but along with that we have the first argument, that is bash file. So this is the so this is what I meant. This is the first argument. These are the second, third, and fourth arguments that we have in our command. Okay, so that's about scripting here, and the next up is that of reading inputs. So how will you read inputs? So to read inputs, there's another keyword called read. So you got to use that inside your file, right, your bash script. So let me just go in there and edit this bash script itself. So I'm going to say insert, and in the next line what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in a command such that I'm going to say echo followed by the text, that is the names or the arguments you entered are. Okay, and after that I'm going to use a read command over here. I'm going to say read, and I'm going to specify the variables here. I'm going to say name1, name2, and name3. So this basically means it's going to capture 3 different variables. So these will be considered as variables, and I can use a dollar symbol later to get back the value stored in these variables, right? So I can do that. Now to do that, let me go to the next line and hit a echo command again. Echo the names you entered are, and let me give dollar name1, dollar name2, and dollar name3. Okay, but let me also comment these lines. Okay, so because I don't want them to be executed, so I do this. All right, so let me just save and exit, and when I exit it'll prompt me for 3 different names after the thing is executed. So that time I'll have to enter these details. Okay, So I'm going to bash it again. So here it's asking me for input, right? The arguments you entered are. So here if I just say Gandhi and FDR, and then let's say Obama, and if I hit enter, I'm having I have the line, the names you entered are, right? The arguments that you entered. So that's what this is. So this is another line, the arguments you entered are. So let me just check what that line is. So yeah, so that is this line. In fact, I can even remove all these things, and I can just make things even more easier for us. So I can just put this in comments, right? I can just save this, and if I go back and just run this command, so this time I've removed the argument. So if I hit enter, then yeah, it says hello world, my name is Vardhan, and then the two variables. Now it's asking me for input, right? So now I can just type an input like say this time. Let me again say Gandhi. Oops. Okay, so again let me now give FDR, and then let's say Obama. Okay, now if I hit enter, then it says the names you entered are, right? So I can even modify it to make it more sensible. So instead of saying instead of saying echo and the arguments are, it should rather be something like this. It should be something like please enter 3 names, right? So now if I save it, now it would make more sense to you people, correct? It says enter 3 names, and now if whatever I type, whether I type Gandhi and FDR and Obama, and yeah, so basically whatever I entered, that got captured and that got displayed over here. So this is more meaningful example, right? So that's how you read inputs in shell, right? In the shell scripts. So that's the end of this, and then yeah, so now next is the if then, if else, if and the for loops, right? So for that, let's again try modifying that file. Okay, I'm just going to comment all these things, right? So I'm going to hit enter and put an hashtag in front of everything so that they don't get executed, right? Okay, so I'll keep hold of this, right? So I can even hashtag this, and I'll enter my details here. So I'll write my if loop here. So similar to any programming language, we have if condition, right? So we have it in this form. We have the if statement, followed by that we have the condition, if it's true or not. Then we'll have one set of condition. If not, it'll be false. So basically, I'm going to use the same variable name here. Okay, so since it's already there, I'm just going to type in the if command here, if, okay, and I'm going to call the variable here, if name. Okay, I can either give equal to Vardhan, or instead I can also give hyphen EQ. So I can do one of these things. So I'll give hyphen EQ. So this basically means it refers to the equal flag. Okay, so it'll basically check if the details here and if the details over here are the same. Okay, now let me just close these bracket and go to the next line. If this one, then, so this is important to write then. Okay, so we follow this format in bash scripting. Okay, I'm going to say echo command is true. All right, and every single if loop that you open that ends with fi. Okay, you need to remember this. Yeah, so the only thing is that you can use either equal to or just the equal to symbol. Okay, but the thing is, if you're using the equal flag, it means you're going to talk about integers in specific. Okay, but instead, if you just rather use equal to, then it will verify anything, whether it's integer or whether it's a string. And in our case, it's a string, right? So we're going to use equal to. Okay, or if not, if we don't want to verify this condition, then we can also use a not equal to. But in our case, it's this. So let me just save this. Okay, and let me hit enter. Right. So now that we are here, let me execute the bash file. And as you can see, the command was verified. Okay, it was if worked out well, and it's true. So yeah, so that's how you execute that command. But let's take the condition of if else, right? So in this case, we've set it to be not equal to Vardhan. Okay, so here we are giving then this command will be executed. So if this is true, then this will be executed. But if not, what are we going to need? What are we going to execute? So for that instant, we got to insert another command, and that would be the else part. Okay, so the else part would be echo command is false, right? So now I'm just going to save this and exit, and let's execute this command. And as you can see, now this time, since we changed it to not equal to, right, and the condition here actually failed, so that's why it says the command is false. So that's the thing. And yeah, it's as simple as this, guys. But in case you want to add another command here, then you can do that too, right? So let me just clear the screen and go back and try executing and showing you something. Okay, so let me just say enter. So before an else part, we can have an elif, right? So here elif, and then here I can have the command, the actual validation here. I can say dollar is name equal to, and let's say Vardhan, right? I'm going to close this, and I'm going to say then run the command echo. This time it should be command is true, right? And else it should be the command is false, and then we end the file with an fi, right? Don't we? So yep, that's it. So if you guys are all clear, then I can just try executing this. Is it the case, guys? I'm just waiting for your approval, because so the elif that you see here, right? So the elif is basically just, you know, execute another else if command. So if this is the case, else if this is the case, or else if this is the case. So we have three different conditions here. So that's it. So it's either the if and else, but in case you want to have another validation here, then you can just have an elif. Basically just else and if together. So that's it. So you shouldn't have any problem here. So yeah. See, this time it says the command is true because the else part didn't get executed, but the elif got executed here. Correct? So that's the thing. And yeah, that's about the if conditions. And then there is the for condition that I want to talk about. Okay, the for loops. How will you execute for loops? So let me just go back to the bash file, insert, and I just want to make all these as comments. Or rather, let me just do one thing. Let me create another file. Okay, let me say bash file2.sh. Okay, I'm going to create another one, and I'm going to say this. Okay, /root/bin/bash, right? And so now I'm going to enter the details here. So the for loop is going to be something like this. Okay, the syntax is something like this. So we have the for loop, and then we have the variable here. Supposing I want to say, in our case, usually it's for I is equal to this range to that range, right? So the variable is I. So here also we can have the same variable I, but instead a simpler syntax is for I in, and after in I can just say the inside flower brackets I can give the sequence. Let's say if I want the numbers 1 to 10 to be executed, then I can just say 1. I have 2 dots over there, and then I can say 10, right? So this sequence would basically be executed. So this is the variable which would execute between this sequence, where I would assume the values between this range, right? So that's what I do. And then after this, when I assume this range, what do you want to do? You can say do, and then we got to say echo $i. So basically for every time I will assume a value, we are printing that value, right? And then we can just give done. And yeah, so let me just save and exit, and let me say bash and the file name file2, right? So if I hit enter, so the sequence is printed, right, guys? So awesome, right? Now similarly, if you want to print from a specified list, then you can do that also by, instead of you know, giving flower brackets here, you can just specify the numbers that you want. So by which space though, that's the thing you need to note. So 3, 4, and yeah, 5, right? So when I do this, then I will assume these different numbers, and then it will print whatever is written here. So I'm just going to save this, and yeah, when I bash this again, so it executed one of these, right? So yeah, that's what I want to show, and that's it about the for loop aspect also, right? So let me just go back to my slides, and yeah, so these are the 4 things that I wanted to talk about with respect to shell scripting. The next topic that I'm going to talk about is that of patch files. Okay, so patch files is again a really important topic. Like I told you all, it's about all the software updates and the upgrades, how you do it, you know, what is the procedure that you got to follow, and all these things, right? So basically, whenever there's a security fix or a software update available, we can apply those changes by using the patch file. So the patch file is a text file which contains the differences between the 2 versions of the same file. So we'll have the original version of the file, right? The first executable which you'll have used to install the software, right? and then based on that, you will have a recent one. You will have a newly updated software, so you'll have that executable. So you'll have the latest version and the one which you installed. So using these two, you generate a difference file. Okay, so you use the difference. Once you've generated the difference, then you create a patch file. Okay, so that's what it says here. A patch file is created by using the difference command. Yeah, basically you use the difference command to generate this patch file, because you'll have two different files here. You will have the original file which you installed, right, which the software which you installed with. Then you have the recent updated version of that particular software, and then you have that version. So basically, to find out the differences between the two, we use the difference command. And when you use the difference command, the newly updated changes or only the additional ones will be noted down, and using that you can create the patch file. Okay, so without wasting much time, let me just quickly try and go ahead and show you how a hello world is executed. Okay, so yeah, but before that, let me just talk about the creation of a patch file. So first of all, you create the difference file when you have the two files. Okay, so these are the two files, the two hello files, right? One is the basic one, the other one has a little bit of a difference, right? When you have these, you use the difference command to generate this kind of a file. All right, so you'll generate the hello.patch using the difference command, and then you patch this particular command, and then you can just execute the command. So you compile the program here and you run the program here. So this is going to be a .c program, right? So I'm going to write hello world in C language, so it's saved as .c. But yeah, either ways, the execution is all done by Linux, right? So let me just quickly go to my terminal and create two hello worlds. Okay, so here I'm going to say vi hello.c, right? And what I'm going to have inside here is I'm just going to have hash include stdio.h. I'm going to close this main. All right, here without any return type, I'm just going to say printf hello world, right? And I'm just going to close this. Okay, it's going to end right here. So I'm going to save and exit. So this is going to be my first hello world program, and I'm going to say hello new.c. Okay, now here I'm just going to use the same things, but with a little bit of a difference. So I'm just going to copy what I wrote here. Okay, and inside the hello new, I'm going to paste this, and additionally I want to add something here. So hash include stdio.h, and the difference is going to be that, so I'm going to say void, and inside this I can add another line saying printf. Okay, and I'm going to say patched file, right? And yes, I'm going to say new line, and yeah, and in fact new line is not required because this is going to be the last line. Okay, so yeah, there we go. Okay, I need to close this. All right, fine. So my program is ready. So this is the new patched file. Okay, and this is saved as hello new. So I'm just going to save and exit. So I have basically hello new and hello.c. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the patch file using the difference command, and the command is diff -u, and then the first installed file. Okay, the installed software, that's the first file, followed by the new file. Here it's going to be hello-new. Okay, so this is going to be the first one, the installed package, and this is going to be the new package, right? So now I can just say patch. Okay, it will generate the patch file now. Okay, so there's a spelling mistake there, right? So yeah, let me just remove that and hit enter. Yeah, my patch file is created now. I can just view my patch by saying cat hello.patch. Yeah, so no file, because yeah, the name of the patch file that I've created is that of patch. So I'm going to say cat patch because the difference has been created and it's saved as patch. So I had put hello.patch and that's wrong, right? So I'm just going to say cat and patch. I'm going to execute it, and so the new file, that the difference command, right, what it is, it generated the patch file with such details where it's saying that these were the commands that was already there, these were the details that was already there, something that is getting added new, and all these things. So this is not something we need to worry about, but since the patch file is generated, the next thing that we need to do is we need to run the patch command. Okay, so what we got to do is we got to say patch, right, and we got to use this operator and call the file patch in our case. So it's patch this one. Okay, and if I hit enter, it says patching file hello.c. So by using this file here, patch file, we have generated the hello.c world, because hello is the name of the original file, right? So we've updated the details in the original file, right? So we whatever difference was there that was stored in the patch, we use the patch command to operate on the generated patch file, and we use that patch file to update the existing hello.c file. So now if you see the cat hello.c, right, when we do this, then you would have the updated or the newer code, correct? So we have this patch file command, right? We have this patch file line, right? This one, and the int main void, the return type, all these things, they were in our hello new.c file, not here. So that's how this got generated. So that's about patching files, right? So it's a very simple example that I showed you of that of hello world. But if it's any big software or program that you're doing it, then it's going to be in a similar fashion. It's just that you need to just follow the same operations. Okay, but to go a step further, let me just also just compile the program and show you, right? That's something that I missed out on. So first, let me clear the screen, and yeah, so the command is cc hello.c, the O flag followed by that, and then say hello. So let's use ./hello. So this is what I've compiled it here, and I'm going to use this command to run it. Okay, so the compiled file, when I ran it, then it said hello world. So that's it, guys. So that's how simple it is, right? So yeah, we have hello world, and then we have patch file, right? So that shows we have executed the updated patch file, right? So our software will get updated in a similar fashion. So we just follow the same procedure. We will update our software or any package or anything, right? So I'm just going to clear the screen and get back my slides. Okay, so we have one small topic left to finish. Let me just quickly go there and get completed with that. So networking in Linux. Okay, so that's the next topic, and here we'll talk about SSH, SFTP, and SCP, right? So first of all, SSH. SSH is used for accessing remote machines, right? So guys, whoever attended my previous session, you would remember this. So SSH is a communication protocol used for accessing remotely located machines, right? And once connected, the commands can be executed on remote machines. So I even showed you that last time, so I'll show you the a similar demonstration this time also. Okay, and if you want to enable SSH, then you got to use the update option. You need to download it from the repository, from the Linux repository. Okay, so the command for that would be yum install open SSH server, right? But by default, most of the distributions have the SSH connection. So in case you guys have removed it by if you have removed it on your own, or if it's not available, then you can use the open SSH server command, right? So you can use the yum install the open SSH server, and you can install SSH. But however, if it's already installed, then it's well and good. You can just start the SSH service by running check config sshd on, okay, and then you got to say service sshd start, and then your SSH service will be up and running. Okay, you can just run it from root. If you're not going to run it from root, then you can just say sudo, which will execute that command from root. All right, it's that simple. And if you want to connect to that particular remote machine, so these are the commands to start your SSH server. But if you want to connect to it, then you got to use this format. So you got to just say SSH followed by the username @ the remote host. Okay, so this basically is the remote username would be the username that is logged on to on that machine. Okay, supposing in my case I've logged on with Edureka as a username, right? So I have to, if I'm accessing my machine from some other remote machine, then I would say SSH Edureka @ the IP address. Okay, so the IP address of my particular machine. But in case if it's not remote, if it's not a remote host, so when we say remote host, it means that if basically both the machines are in the same domain, then we don't need to give @ domain host, because it would have the same IP address, right? So the domain name will have the same IP address. So we can just give SSH at username. So that would be enough, correct? So that's for basically connecting to the remote machine. And when you hit this command, you'd be inside the remote machine's server. So let me just quickly go to the next slide. Right, so here we have other details. So in my demonstration, I'll be showing you one with that of virtual machines. Okay, so I will not be using so since I don't have any physical machine with me, so I'll be executing the command on my virtual machine, right? I'll be referring the other virtual machine in my virtual box. So I have two virtual machines, one called the master, the other called the slave. So let me just go to my VirtualBox. So this is the master which I'm running. I showed you a demo on this. So let me just go back to my VirtualBox and start the slave machine. Okay, so this would take a couple of minutes to start, but in the meanwhile, let me set up the network. Okay, so I'm just going to connect to the internet. So I'm just going to click on this. So the thing is that guys, you got to make sure that both your network ports are working. Okay, in my case, I have ETH1 and ETH0. Okay, but this is because I'm using a VM and I'm connecting to another virtual machine from my VirtualBox. Okay, so that's the reason I have two of these. But in your case, you would have only ETH0, correct? Because you'll be just connected to the network and you'll be accessing a remote machine. Okay, but in case even if you're using a VM, then you will have two of these connections. So one would be the network NAT, right? So in my case, I've configured ETH0 to be NAT, where this would help me connect to the internet, and the ETH1 would help me connect to the other virtual machine in my network. Correct? In my in my case, it's in my own system, in my own VirtualBox. The other virtual machine in my VirtualBox. So it would be ETH1, and ETH0 is basically the one that connects me to the internet. So if in your case, if you don't if ETH0 is down, right, then you won't be connected to the internet. So that's the thing, right? So I'll just help you out there. But before that, let me just log in here. Okay, I've hit enter. Now this is the slave machine. But in the meanwhile, let me just quickly go back to my host machine, and I'm going to come to my home directory. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to check my IP status. So I'm going to run the command ifconfig. Okay. Now, when I run this command, what you can see is my ETH0, which is nothing but my NAT address, which connects me to the internet, that has the IP address of 10.0.2.15. Okay. And alongside that, my local address, that is my VM's address, is 192.168.56.2. Okay. And similarly, so the L1 is something you don't need to worry about. It comes by default. But what you need to be worried about is ETH0 if you're trying to access a remote machine. But if you're accessing another VM, then it's going to be ETH1. Okay, so you'll have basically two network connections, one connecting to the internet, one connecting you to the other machine in your network. Okay, the other machine or the other host. So in here, this is the IP address. So let me go to my slave machine and run the same command. So I'm going to say ifconfig. But before that, let me just make it a little bigger. So I'm just going to run the command ifconfig, okay, to check the IP status. And okay, so now it's not showing any IP address here. Okay, so that's because my net is down probably. Yep, it is. So I'm just going to connect to my NAT. But however, my local address is shown. So I've configured this to 192.168.56.2. Okay, so now let me just clear the screen and run the command again. Now, yes, I'm connected to the internet also, and this is my address locally. Okay, this is my network address. So the catch here is both my slave and my my master has been connected to .2. Now what I got to do is I got to change the IP address of one of these machines. Okay, so basically, since this is my network address, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop this IP. Okay, so to drop that IP, I need to use the command sudo IP adder delete and specify the IP that you want to drop. Let's say copy paste. Okay, and give space, and after that say which dev ETH1. Okay, so now this basically will drop this IP address. So when I hit enter, okay, it asks for a password, and yeah, so my IP has dropped. So now if I do an ifconfig, then you would find that my ETH1 doesn't show any IP. That's because I dropped it. So now let me add the new address. So the only change this time is going to be the IP that I want to change it to. I'm going to say 3/24, and I'm going to, instead of delete, it's going to be add. Okay, so this time I'm going to add this as the IP address. Okay, so I'm going to hit enter. So if I run ifconfig now, as you can see, my IP address has been updated to this. So basically my IP address for slave is set, and for my master is also set. Okay, so the master has the IP. So let me just clear the screen, and what I'm going to do is I need to go to my etc/hosts file. Okay, so I'm going to say vi/etc/hosts. Okay, now the thing is that I have already set the IP address of the master to 102 and 103 over here. Okay, now I got to change this. Now since my master has a IP address value of 56.2, I'm going to change it to 2 here, and since slave as 3, that's what I've set in my slave machine, right? So I'm going to change it to these. Okay, I'm going to save this, and okay, so it seems like I've not logged in as read only, because this is something that can be only updated by the root. So I'm going to execute the same command as sudo, and this is the password. And yeah, now let me change these things. Okay, so this is the IP of the master, this is the IP of the slave. Okay, and save and quit. So yeah, my host file has been changed here, and similarly I have to go here. I'm going to clear the screen. I need to change to etc/hosts. Okay, it's not change directory, it's vi, and it'll be executed as sudo. So okay, so here it's already set to be 192.168.56.2. so again, the master, that was the previous machine, that is 2, and this is my slave machine, this is set to 3. So I don't need to make any changes here when I quit. So if you guys want to understand again, so what I did is I have my master machine as I've given it one IP address, and the slave machine I've given it the other IP address. Okay, so in my case, what I've done right now is I've given them 56.2 and 56.3. Okay, now that I've done this, I can just straight away run the command now to access the machine. Now since the IP address for the master has been set to .2 in my master and to .3 in my slave, I can access the slave from this IP address, right? I can use this IP address from my master machine. So this is currently, I'm in the master machine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do SSH to this particular IP address, and I don't need to in fact give the IP address because I've saved it with the name of slave. It's like a variable. So if I just put SSH and if I write slave, then it will connect me here. So but indirectly I can even type in the IP address. So that's completely my wish. So I can do anything. So if I just say SSH and if I just say slave, then I would connect to that particular IP address, that is 56.3. okay, that's fine. That's just a warning. And yes, so I've connected now. So right now I'm so even though it says Edureka at localhost, it's actually referring to the fact that I'm logged in into the slave. Okay, the last time I logged in was on this day. So to verify if I'm connected to the slave or the master, what I can do is I can check the documents, right? So present working directory, I'm right now in the Edureka folder. So let me just cd to documents. Okay, ls. So there are no commands here. Okay, and let me verify that by going to the slave. This is my slave machine. I'm going to Edureka home and go to documents, and you can see that there is no documents here, right? So there are absolutely no documents here. So that's the thing. So that's the connection. That means that my master is connected to slave. And to prove it further, what I can do is I can show you this the master's documents folder. Okay, the documents folder of master has all these files. It has the ones which I created earlier. Okay, but had it been referring to the master, then it would have displayed everything, right? When I did ls, that didn't happen. So this means that I had connected to the slave. So that's the thing. And similarly, if you want to just exit from the connection, then you can just type in the command exit. Okay, but however, you can just connect to your master in this way. And similarly, even the slave there can connect to the master by just saying SSH master, right? So I'll show you how that is done. So I'll just go here and I'm going to say SSH master. That's because the etc host file has the IP address stored here. The master is .2, right? So it should connect here. It's asked for the password. This is the password. Here you go. And this is the login. And yes, so now if I change directory to documents, and if I do ls, I'll find the files I created earlier. So this is what I'm doing from the slave machine. So this is how SSH is done. And in our case, I'm just accessing another VM in my own system. But however, if in real case scenario, you can do the same thing using the same commands. You can access any machine that's located in the different continent or in a different place altogether, right? So that is how SSH works. So it's pretty simple. It's pretty fun to work, and I'm pretty sure you guys are having fun. And you guys having fun? Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping for a couple of yes from you people. Okay, so anyways, in the meanwhile, I'll just go on to the next topic. I've shown you what SSH stands for, and now comes SFTP. Okay, so SFTP is something that stands for Secure File Transfer Protocol. Okay, and this is for transferring files. Now the thing with SSH is that we use the SSH to connect to the remote machine, right? We connected there and we can execute commands over there. But the problem is we cannot transfer files. Okay, it cannot be used for downloading or uploading files from the remote machine. So that's the limitation with SSH. But instead of this, we have something called as the secure file transfer protocol. Okay, and we can use the SFTP for transferring these files, right? It's not, see, many people mistake it to be an extension of FTP. Okay, so FTP, yes, is an extension to FTP, but SFTP has nothing to do with FTP. Okay, so this is another protocol that's on its own, which is something related to SSH. Okay, so this stands for secure file transfer protocol, and we can transfer files using this protocol. So again, to run this protocol, you can just use it by giving this command SFTP and the IP address. Okay, so it's going to be the same format. It's the username @hostname. Okay, but in my case, I'm just in the same domain, so I don't need to give the entire thing. I can just give the IP address, and in place of the IP address, I can just give master, because in my etc/host file, I've saved the slaves and the master's IP address over there. So from the master, I can just give SFTP slave, and then I'll connect to the slave machine. And from the slave, if I do it the other way, I'll just come there. So when I hit enter, I'll get this kind of a command, and I can execute commands there, right? So I can just show you that. So I'm just going to go back to my terminal. I'm in my master right now, right? So I'm just going to give the command SFTP and say slave, because I'm right now in the master. And yeah, connecting to slave, and the password is this. There you go. And now I've entered SFTP. Okay, now when I do ls, I'm again, okay, so again now I'm in my slave machine. Okay, and currently seems like I'm inside the home/Edureka directory. So my slave, of course, let me just open my slave and show you that. So this is my home/Edureka directory, where I have all these files and folders. So this is what I'm able to see right now. Supposing I want to see what is the present working directory that I'm in, I can also do that by running pwd. Okay, so it says the remote working directory, right? I'm currently in the home/Edureka, correct? So similarly, the other thing is, if you want to also see the present working directory of your own machine, okay, so this is the remote machines directory. So if you want to see the working directory of your machine, of the host itself, not the remote host, but the host itself, then you can do that by appending L before the command. So we ran pwd that time. This time let's run pwd, and if I give enter, it says local working directory. Okay, so even now I'm here. So yeah, so if I just say L and cd documents, okay, I'll enter the documents folder. So if I again say L and ls, I'll have a list of all the files that I created earlier. So this is what the demo I showed you, because I created all these from my local machine. But if I just run ls, I'm referring to the fact that I'm talking about the slave here, the remote host. And if I say cd, instead of saying lcd, if I just say cd and documents, okay, so there's a wrong spelling there, right? So documents. So yes, I'm in the documents folder of my host. So if I just run ls, you can see that there are no files over there. So that is what I wanted to show, right? lcd. And similarly, for every single command, you just need to append L before the actual command, okay, whether it's a change directory or present print working directory or anything for that matter of fact. And here comes the important part, the whole topic of using SFTP, right? The whole reason anybody would use SFTP is because of the fact that we can download files, correct? Of course, we can't download directories here. We can download files, and for downloading a file, it's a simple command. Just say get the file name and the path name, right? So when you say get, you're just referring the path of the file in your remote host. Okay, you are saying get this file from this path. Okay, basically you're also mentioning where you want to store it, right? So this is the destination, this is the source, and this is the destination. And similarly, if you want to upload files to the remote host, then you can say put file name and path name. So that's how it is, right? So yeah. So let me just execute this command and show you once, right? So currently this is my slave, and doesn't seem like I have any other file other than this. So derby.log is the one file that I have in my Edureka folder, right? So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to say print present working directory. It says this. I'm just going to come back and say ls. So I have derby.log. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this command. Okay, so I'm just going to clear the screen and run that command again. And yes, I'm going to pull this file, right? So I'm going to say get derby.log, and where do I want to store it? In my okay, so there's the derby.log here also. So in fact, what I can do is I can store it on my desktop here, right? So there's no derby.log over here, so I can just say desktop, because I'm currently okay. Now before that, I need to verify where I am. So in my local directory, so I'm going to say local pwd. So okay, I'm in documents, so that's good, I did that. So when I go back, I'm now in my okay, so I made a mistake there. So what I should have done is I should have done lcd. Okay, so lpwd would bring me back to home Edureka, and I need to do cd space okay, so this means now we're all fine. Okay, so I'm in my home directory. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to again quickly clear the screen, do an ls. We have derby.log, so I'm going to say get derby.log, and I'm going to store it in my desktop, right? Fetching, and yes, it's completed 100%. So to verify that, I can just minimize this and check and see the derby.log file is downloaded from the slave. From the slave, I downloaded it to the master. So the same way, you can just use the put command, right? But it's a pretty simple thing, so I don't want to waste your time. We are running short of time already. So I'm just going to exit this, okay? And I'm going to talk about SCP, okay? Now when I talk about that, let me show you the, let me talk about the limitations there. So I'm just going to, yes, so we're already out here. So I'm going to clear the screen. Let me go back to my slides. So this is where we were. We've run the get command and the put command. So similarly for the put command, also you just specify the file name and the path name, right? So put wherever the file is in your system, local system, you choose the file name with the path and then the destination. So that's it. So you'll be fine when you run the command. And now coming to the next topic, that is SCP. So the previous one was SFTP, where I showed you how that was for transferring files. But SCP is for transferring folders and directories. SFTP cannot be used for transferring folders and directories, right? And SCP is a protocol used for this purpose, whether it's directories or folders. So similarly, the syntax that you got to note here is that the source comes first and the second comes destination, okay? And the command to run SCP is this: SCP-R remote host : path name, and basically the path name for wherever you want to download a directory from, right? So the remote host basically refers to the fact that it is the IP address. So if you have the remote address, if you have the IP address : path name, then it means you're pulling the directory. You're first going to this directory, okay, you're downloading something, and then you're downloading it to this path in your host, okay? But if you have the path name first, and then if you have the remote host : path name, so that is nothing but IP address : path name, this means that you are using the SCP to upload a file from your path to the remote host, correct? So it all depends on where the remote host is. So that's why the syntax is important over here, because whatever comes first, right? The syntax, according to the syntax, if the IP address comes first, that means you're downloading it. And if the syntax comes second, if that's the second argument, then it means you're uploading a directory. So let me again just quickly go to the terminal, okay? And let me just run a pwd, okay? So let me change directory to documents, and we have all these things here, right? Fine. Now I'm going to run the command SCP-R, and I'm going to refer slave, okay? Slave, and in slave, which is the directory that I want to go to. What do I want to download from the slave? First of all, let me figure that out. Supposing I want to download the okay, so there is basically nothing much here. So what I'm going to do is let me just download this music folder itself, okay? So I'm just going to create a random file here, create document empty file, okay? I'm going to name it this .txt, okay? So basically it's empty, okay? So there's going to be nothing here. I'm going to close this, but there's going to be a file inside my music folder. So what I'm going to do is I'll go to my master, I'll say slave, and the path is /home/ Edureka /music. Okay, so this is the path, and where do I want to store it? In my host, I want to just store it in desktop. Okay, so I just want to do this. So let's hit enter. It asks for a password. Great. So this was the file and folder. This is the file that I downloaded. So that's 100% completed. Now let me just go back to my master. Okay, so seems like there's an issue here, right? So it doesn't seem to have downloaded. So I think the mistake I did was I didn't specify the entire path. So that's what I should have done. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to enter the entire path anyways, slash home slash Edureka slash desktop. Okay, there's a spelling mistake here. Okay, now if I hit enter and if I go back, now you can see that the music folder is created, correct? So music and the file inside that has also been downloaded. So that's what the SCP command does, guys. So I had made a mistake that I had not specified the path. So guys, yeah, remember you need to specify the entire path if you want it to be downloaded, right? So that's the thing. And again, so let me show you how to put it, right? If I want to upload it to the remote host, then again, the command is pretty similar. It's just that you will have it the other way around. So I'm just gonna copy this, or let me just write it all over again, right? So just to eliminate any confusion. So the command is SCP-R, and then to put, you got to first specify the path, the source of that file, okay? And the source is in your directory, right? In your host. So what do I want to transfer? Let's go to Edureka home and choose something. ABCD is an empty folder, so documents is there. Okay, so in documents I have quite a few files and folders. So what I'll do is I will transfer documents, this folder itself, to my remote host. So I'm gonna say slash home slash Edureka slash documents, right? So I'm gonna transfer this to my slave, and my basically this will capture the IP address of my slave, and the path I want to store it in is slash home slash Edureka slash, let's say I want to store it in downloads folder. Okay, so let me go back to my master machine and say DS. Okay, so when I enter, it asks for the password. There you go. And yes, all the files associated with that, all the files inside that documents folder has also been downloaded, right? So let's verify that by going here. And yes, so this was the documents folder, downloads folder, and we have that whole entire set of documents that I created, right? So everything is there here. So that's how it is, guys. So that's how SCP works, right? So these are simple examples of how things are done. Okay, so when you're working in real-time environment, you'll have a lot of such work. You'll be working on these things continuously. So yeah, let me just get back to the slides because I've come to an end with that aspect. So guys, that's the end of the session then, right? So I had shown you all these things during my session. I showed you how file permissions and ACLs work, right? I showed you how to set file permissions, and then how ACLs extend the file permissions. And then I taught about shell scripting. I showed you some of the shell scripting techniques there. I showed you how to use variables in comments, how to use the for loop, if loop, the if else, or the if elif loops. And then I showed you those things. And then I spoke about patching in Linux. So patching, I took a very simple example of Hello World. And if it's any software that you're going to work on, you got to do a similar thing, right? So that's patching. And then finally, we have the SSH, SFTP, and the SCP, right? So yeah, these are the three different networking protocols that we follow, which is highly preferable in Linux. And I showed you that. SSH for accessing the remote host, SFTP for downloading and uploading files, and SCP for downloading directories and folders. So yeah, seems like all of you are happy. I've actually got a couple of comments saying thanks a lot, Vardhan. So yes, guys, thank you, because it was pretty good that, starting with the webinar, it was pretty active. People were asking questions. You were attentive. I really liked it. And even during the later half of the webinar, I hope that you people understood everything there. You understood the networking techniques, the patching and stuff like that, right? So yeah, I think probably I'll meet you all again during some other time. Maybe the next Linux webinar, we'll meet each other. And until then, just take care, guys. All right, see ya. Bye-bye. Thank you for being in the session. All the best. I hope you enjoyed listening to this video. Please be kind enough to like it and you can comment any of your doubts and queries and we will reply to them at the earliest. Do look out for more videos in our playlist and subscribe to our Edureka channel to learn more. Happy learning!